I'm Connor Old, and this is Old's Oscar Countdown, and today we're going to be looking at the most beautiful category. This is Best Cinematography. This is going to be a fun category for me because actually some of my favorite cinematographers are being nominated this year. So I think a category I think will sort of recognize some of my favorite sort of most beautifully shot movies of the year. And could get a nomination and a possible win for one of my favorite movies of the year, which hasn't got a lot of attention so far. I'm glad it will. But if you're new to the series, what we do every single week is I break down a new Oscar category and I predict my nominations. This is for the 2018 Oscars. From there, once the nominations get announced, then I'll predict what I think is going to win. But right now, we're not necessarily worrying about what's going to win. We're worried about what will get the nominations. I give you my 5 picks, and then I give you two possible ones that I think can get in, and maybe on another day we'll do it. Now, I do this segment at the top of the show called Connor's Corner. What this is just keeps you guys updated on what my thoughts are. My Best Picture video was all the way back in October, so it's a little outdated. So this way, this allows me to keep you guys updated on which movies are rising and which movies are falling. So the movie that I think is rising right now, and has been rising, but has been sort of staying its lead, is Call Me By Your Name. I was thinking about this theory, like I was thinking about the 3 Billboards theory before. Like I was thinking maybe 3 Billboards wins, maybe Lady Bird wins. Now, Call Me By Your Name could win because it's mirroring a very similar path to Moonlight, which won last year. In blunt terms, it's not going to win because, oh, the gay movie won last year. Moonlight, the gay movie, won last year. This is also a gay movie, so it's not going to win this year. You know, sometimes in Oscars you have to think of these blunt terms. So in that sense, you know, maybe the people, Oscar voters, are thinking that, that we're not going to award this one. So maybe that's not it, but it's very following a similar path where it's going to win at Best Adapted Screenplay. It very well could win Best Supporting Actor for Michael Stolberg, something like that, right? And then wins Best Picture. It could follow this trajectory that I see happening for sure. The real question is that, is this the movie that people sort of will will support, because this could be the number 2 runner, but I could see this more as a Manchester by the Sea thing, where it gets maybe an acting and then a screenplay nod, but then doesn't win. So it's an interesting thing like that. But this is like a Manchester by the Sea, where it has sustained since Sundance as this incredible movie, and I can't wait to see it because I've heard just amazing things about it. That's the rising, and then the quick falling is Downsizing. I really enjoyed this movie. I saw this one at TIFF. I think people are giving it a really hard time because no one's really seen it, but the people who have seen it, some of the critics are giving it okay reviews, middling reviews. I really liked it. I think it's one of those movies where you either really love it or you don't at all. There's a switch in the second half, or really the third act, where it goes somewhere else, and you're like, oh man, I didn't really like that. But I personally really liked it. I'm sad to see it out of the race though, because it's really out of any categories. The best possible chance was, what's her name? I don't want to butcher it, but I think it's Hong Chow for Best Supporting Actress for Downsizing, because she is really great in the movie. But I think that's pretty much out of the race because Downsizing is just, I don't think, a movie people have been hearing great things about, which is a shame. Okay, so now let's go over to my first pick, which is Rogers Deakins for Blade Runner 2049. Now, this is one of the most beautifully shot movies of the year. It's incredible, and I think this is one of those years where it's a legacy year. In a weird year, you know, I mean, normally these legacy years happen. What I mean by that is like Al Pacino loses for The Godfather and loses, you know, a couple other times, and then he's like, okay, fine, give him Scent of a Woman. Not his best performance. You know, maybe Denzel Washington should have won that year, but it's a legacy year. Similar, Martin Scorsese wins Best Director for The Departed. It's a legacy year. They're really awarding him for Raging Bull and Taxi Driver and Goodfellas, but they never had before. He never won for that, so it's sort of a legacy thing. This is the same thing with Rogers Deakins. We saw this even last year. This can go not to only the main categories, but to the smaller categories. We saw this last year with Hacksaw Ridge winning Best Sound Mixing. A huge surprise upset because people didn't know, but the guy who got nominated was Kevin something, got nominated 23 times before and never won. So it was something that heard in the industry, right? Similar to Rogers Deakins. He's an old man. He's done some of the incredible movies. He's most famously known as like the Coen Brothers cinematography, but he's also done the assassination of Jesse James by like Howard Robert Ford. He's done a lot of Denis Villeneuve's movies, including Prisoners and Sicario, which he was nominated before. But actually, get this, he's been nominated 13 times before. He's arguably the best cinematographer living right now. He's been nominated 13 times before, and he's never won. So I think this is definitely a legacy year, because, and people have sort of been saying this like, oh my God, he finally needs to get this. Plus, I mean, you look at the trailers, this is an incredibly looking movie. I think this is not necessarily a legacy thing. It is partly legacy, but it's also partly because this is a really beautiful movie. I mean, if you see this in the theaters, it's like, wow, it's this grandscaping thing. And I think what was great about his cinematography that's so crucial that people are totally overlooking, and why I really respect him and Denis Villeneuve, is their ability to create a new Blade Runner. If you think about it, the original Blade Runner was a cyberpunk movie. Its visual style was distinct, it was new for its time. Then a movie like Ghost in the Shell comes out, I think this year, and what does everyone say? Oh, it's okay. It sort of reminds me of Blade Runner and The Matrix, because it was the Blade Runner and The Matrix. It took its style. Now that style isn't inventive anymore. It was created in the 80s, you know. That was inventive then, but now it feels rewashed and stuff. So that's what I was worried about. This new Blade Runner would feel like a Ghost in the Shell. It'd feel like that. But so not only does it, but it doesn't. It has that sort of claustrophobic Los Angeles 2049 in the scenario of that downtown, but it also explores that. It becomes its new visual style. There's a lot of open areas in sort of the farming areas. I mean, sort of these grand sweeping wide shots in Wallace Corporation, in that sort of building. I mean, there's places in, like, there's this great scene you see in the trailers where Harrison Ford's like in an abandoned hotel. That's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to spoil the movie, because it's fantastic and you should see it, although there really isn't that much to spoil necessarily, because it's something you should have to experience. And the shots and the different uses of colors, you know, Blade Runner was very much a blue color. This one very much was like orange, and it was almost like a desert in some scenes. It was really beautiful, because I really commend Rogers Deakins for creating a new type of Blade Runner, a new visual style that was different from Blade Runner, but still felt Blade Runner. I think that was an incredible task from him and director Denis Villeneuve. I think he really should get nominated for this, and hopefully he wins. But he could lose to this number 2 slot, the potential upset, Hoyt van Hoytema for Dunkirk. He's the possible upset just because if you think about Dunkirk, if it's going to get any nominations, it's going to get cinematography. Why? Because this movie is so much about, well, the movies that, you know, really love, and people really love the movie. People think it's possibly going to win Best Picture, right? So if you look at this, what was this movie about? It was about seeing the movie in theaters. It was a big sort of box office surprise hit that people didn't think was going to get even in the top 10 domestically. I did, and I actually think came like 6th or 7th, actually, surprisingly. But it was very much about that experience. It was showing 70mm, which I thought was only a Los Angeles thing or a New York thing, but showing it in my local theater. And even after you saw it, it said, you got a t-shirt that said, I saw Dunkirk in 70mm film. So I was like, okay, wow, this is a big deal. People, Christopher Nolan was really pushing this big sort of cinematic experience. And Hoyt van Hoytema, I really hope he gets nominated, because he's one of my favorite cinematographers. He did Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Interstellar, one of my favorite movies of all time, Her. So I'm sort of pushing for him personally, but I also think that, look, he's got that IMAX camera on his shoulder. Those things are super heavy. He's done some handheld things. They did some things with IMAX cameras that were never done before. They put them in a cockpit of a plane. They're doing this really crazy stuff. You hear these stories, I just know these stories, and the cinematography is sort of the main point of this movie, is that sort of, it feels almost like a virtual reality. You feel in there because the screen is so massive, and you're just right there, and it was one of the best theater experiences of this year for sure, maybe of all time, because it was just so immersive, and I think it has to do with the cinematography and the way it was shot and the way they saw it, and the interesting things with the cameras. And this was a unique experience, and they were pushing the unique experience. They were pushing old-fashioned cinematic techniques, and I think if Dunkirk's as big of a contender as people think, this will for sure get in for a nomination and possibly upset Rogers Deakins for Blade Runner, because it is sort of that Best Picture consensus vote. All right, next pick is Darkest Hour. This is for Bruno Del Bonell. Bruno Del Bonell is also one of my favorite cinematographers. He did Inside Llewyn Davis, got nominated for that. Amelie got nominated for that. And Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince got nominated for that. Maybe the most beautiful Harry Potter movie, I think. He got nominated for a Harry Potter movie and then bounced. Like, if he can get nominated for a Harry Potter movie, he can get nominated for a Best Picture contender like Darkest Hour. I was reading up about this, and he talks about using the style of light and dark, how Winston Churchill often has like small victories and then small losses, and that's how you win wars. It's not one big victory, right? It's just day to day, the day and day. That's why there's light days, there's dark days. So sometimes he lights scenes better, sometimes he lights him in the dark when there's sort of negative feelings towards him. He also uses these Janusz Kaminski pools of light to sort of come in into the rooms. He uses often hard light to show sort of backlash that Winston Churchill was receiving because they weren't sure if he was the right guy. You know, even his own party wanted him out. So interesting things like that. And then of course Winston Churchill always has the cigar. So you look at the poster, it's sort of like that beautiful thing with the smoke, and how I love movies that use smoke in an interesting way. You use the shadows. It takes a skilled cinematographer to do. And I think Bruno it's great, and just look at the trailers. It's a beautifully shot movie. You can just tell, at least, I mean, I think I can. My next pick is The Shape of Water for Dan Lewiston, and I think for this movie definitely has a fairy tale aspect. And when people talk about the fairy tale, they talk about the story. But what also you have to consider is the rhythm of the movie. And the rhythm of the movie really starts with the camera, how the movie sort of goes throughout, the visual style of that movie. He does use a lot of hard lights to make this realistic sort of sharp edges very much softer, using diffusion to sort of spread it out, to sort of feel like this watercolor aspect to it. And then you have these beautiful things like Mr. X is the fish character, Doug Jones plays him. You have him, and then when Sally Hawkins goes into his tank, you have this beautiful sort of oceanic deep sea blue, contrasted with her red jacket. That's the poster. It's this beautiful shot, and once I seen that, I was like, wow, how did they shoot that on just a $19 million budget, and how is it so acclaimed, and like how is it so beautiful in that beautiful contrast, similar to like that Schindler's List, that red jacket really is beautiful in that sense. They used an RA digital for this movie. It's not that, but it's similar camera to that. I think he really should be lauded for this. Plus, I mean, the momentum of Shape of Water is really sort of gaining steam, and he could get in just based on the momentum of the movie. But my next pick doesn't have a lot of momentum in terms of best picture, but it does in terms of her. That's right, I said her, Rachel Morrison for Mudbound. Now this is one of those stats where, believe it or not, a woman has never been nominated for best cinematography, which is a surprise sort of stat for me, because you think, oh, you know, the director has been nominated and won, and you know, of course, something screenwriting and acting, of course, but not for cinematography. Not even been nominated before. So she actually won for New York Film Critics Circle. If this sort of story gets around, I think she could sort of garner a campaign for herself to really push herself and to get that nomination for Mudbound. But that being said, Mudbound is also a beautifully shot movie. You have the yellows of the wheat and the farm, and just the hot day. It feels like so hot in this movie in the south, and you contrast that with the sort of the mud, which also seems hot. And so the yellows contrast with the browns, and how their clothes that they wear almost sort of camouflage themselves into the background. Just how there's one distinct visual style throughout the movie. I think it's really great cinematography done by Rachel Morrison. It'll be interesting to see if she gets in. I think she's going to get in, but her possible upset could be my first possible, which is Call Me by Your Name for, I'm not even going to try, Sayumbu Makadi Prom. And this is just because this is actually him there, and then there's Luca Guadagnino, and then that's Timothée Chalamet for, and this is in the 80s. There's a lot of vibrant colors. If you know the 80s, this is in Italy, a very vibrant time during the summer. It's sort of the colors sort of leap off the screen. Even look at the posters, this bright sort of blue color. So you feel that sort of thing. Plus, it could get swept away sort of with the support of the film. That could be a very real possibility. And then my last pick, which is Ed Lockman for Wonderstruck. He got nominated for Far From Heaven and Carol, both movies with Todd Haynes. He's working with Todd Haynes again. He could get it in, but I just don't think Wonderstruck has a lot of support for the movie itself. But if it's based on just talent, Ed Lockman, who did an incredible job in Carol. I love that movie. What he could do is, like the movie, if you don't know, it's parallel stories of two kids. One's in the 40s and one's in, I think, modern day. So you have the color versus the light. So the color versus the black and white. So you have black and white cinematography, which is completely different than color cinematography. It's very visual. It interweaves. They change back and forth. It's not like the first half, the second half. So it's really interesting to show that, you know, this is a visual style. This is very much an impressive visual feat, and almost a little bit showy in that sense. But I think Ed Lockman, he's not a showy guy from what I know. And I think that if they were going to base it based on pure talent, I think Ed Lockman will get in. Anyways, guys, for all those reasons, that's why I think the nominations are going to get nominated. Let me know what some of your picks, maybe. What are some of the most beautiful movies you've seen this year? I'd love to hear your comments below. I want to create this awesome film community. Make sure to like the video. And I'm Connor Old, and until next time, stay tuned.